We now know the Republican contenders who want to replace Lindsey Graham on the U.S. Senate ballot in November. Welcome into On the Record. I'm Andy Weber. Brian Blakely is off this week. The 1 week filing period is now over with 12 candidates officially in the race. That includes Senator Lindsey Graham, who is appointed to serve out the remaining months of her brother's term. Tuesday marked the beginning of funeral services for South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who passed away on July 11th after suffering from an aortic tear. Tuesday also marked the end of the filing period for candidates looking to run for the seat set to open in January of next year. State filings show that 12 people are running, including Graham's sister Darlene, who was also appointed to serve out the remaining months of her brother's current term.
I feel like I can do it. I feel an inner peace about it. Will it be difficult? Yes.
Also on the ballot, Mark Lynch, who lost to Lindsey by 28 percentage points in the original primary back in June.
Well, I'm the only one that's not a career politician. You know, I bought into my father's business, and it's an appliance and furniture business. We're in our 74th year, and I know what it's like, and I know what people are going through.
I know what it's like when every dollar matters.
Other notable names on the ballot are U.S. Reps Russell Fry and Ralph Norman.
We just have not been able to get anything passed. I want to change that.
Former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford officially threw his hat in the ring on Monday.
And I'm here to ask that you join us in this effort to get Washington's finances back in order so that indeed our children might be able to live the American dream.
Early voting for the special election runs from Wednesday, August 5th to Friday the 7th. The actual primary is August 11th with a runoff scheduled for the 25th. An exclusive Queen City News and Emerson College poll shows Ralph Norman leading the pack to take over late South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham's seat. Right now, Norman leads Graham's sister Darlene by just 3%. After that, though, there's a big gap between them and the rest of the pack. Polling also reveals the biggest issues voters think the Palmetto State's next senator should focus on. The economy getting the overwhelming majority at 60%. That makes up more than immigration, healthcare, and foreign policy combined. Republican special election voters are also strongly in favor of U.S. military action in Iran. Nearly 3/4 approve of the fighting. Only around 20% disapprove, and fewer than 10% have no strong feelings either way. It's a campaign that's moving quickly as candidates look to earn voters' support in the race for South Carolina's open U.S. Senate seat. Congressman Russell Fry was one of the first to jump in. I sat down with him to talk about his vision for the state and the challenges ahead.
It's important to care for the people of South Carolina, make sure that their needs come first, that we're putting families first, and that we're really setting up ourselves, our children. I've got a 9-year-old, our grandchildren, making sure that we can continue to bless and help this great American experiment.
You already have constituents because you're a member of Congress, but I'm curious, you're also back on the campaign trail. What issues matter right now the most to South Carolinians, you'd say?
Oh my gosh, look, it always comes down to the economic drivers. Like, I grew up in a house we didn't have much. I mean, I was a working class family. They scraped by with, my mom was a bartender, my dad was a sign man. And, I think about this constantly is like, what are the economic pressures that people feel? I feel them too. I've got a small family. That stuff is important, right? Like, people want a little bit of optimism. They want to feel like things are moving in a good direction. They want to feel like their job is secure, that they can afford to buy a house, that they can live and have a successful career as part of the middle class, that they have an opportunity for a better tomorrow. And I think that's always at the top of my mind when we look at public policy is, how do we deliver that? What is the best way that you can have the best impact? I think it's pretty simple. Keep taxes low, get government regulations out of the way that really stifle economic activity, they stifle energy production. They really stand in the way.
I think so many campaigns across the country are discussing affordability. Would you say deregulation is the best way to fix that? How do we address that affordability issue that everyone is discussing?
Well, I think people look most easily at the cost of their power bills and electric bills and how much it costs to put gas in their car. Having American energy independence, producing more, is a good thing. It allows the market to have a sustainable price of gas. This is a very healthy thing, but we don't generate power in this country either right now. It is so hard to put up a power plant, natural gas, nuclear. And why is that? We've had some great, I say, hearings on Capitol Hill on the culprit of that. And the culprit really is the red tape. The amount of time that it takes to construct something, how many ways that can get thrown off.
Graham was a known supporter of the Iran war. Some critics have said the war is to blame for rising prices. Where do you stand on that conflict, and where do you think the involvement should be in terms of U.S. involvement?
Look, the American people, I think, clearly understand that the Iranian regime, with their hands on a nuclear weapon, is unfathomable and it's unpalatable. I think everyone rightfully assesses this to be not only a national security risk, but an economic one as well. And I think President Trump acted. The Iranians have not acted in good faith. They have not acted in good faith for 30, 40 years. And so both between the economic pressure that the United States can leverage and certainly some military pressure, keeping and maintaining a degree of commerce is important. This president is a president of peace. President Trump has signed eight peace deals and put them together on conflicts that have been going on for decades. At his core, he wants peace. I share that belief with him. But the Iranians, of course, have been bad actors. And so this is temporary. I think we all understand that. When there was a moment of a ceasefire, gas prices precipitously fell. And so we all struggle with this. We also know that it is temporary. But the longer term goal here is stop being so reliant on places around the world that want to kill us, that want to hurt us. We need to be self-sufficient, and we only do that when we realize that we've got oil and natural gas in broad reserves across the country, that we can harvest that we can process that here in America. That leads to lower gas prices. This is certainly a long-term goal and a gain.
Back on the race, it's a crowded conservative field competing in this primary. I think I've seen multiple candidates, at least they've told me, they're not career politicians. So how would you distinguish yourself from the other candidates in this race?
Look, I'm 41 years old. I have a young family. I have been an ally of President Trump since I've been elected, not just voting the right way, but delivering conservative results. I think people expect that. They want a fighter in Washington, D.C. They want somebody who understands the plight of the middle class and who is trying to navigate and make life more affordable for our families. We've done that. We've delivered on that. We don't just talk the talk. We walk the walk. We pass legislation. We focus on things that for South Carolina and resources that could be made available here. We bring that back home to our state because it's important. It's important work that we do. I look at the future and where we go. People want a fighter. They want an ally. President Trump, they want a new generation of conservative leadership, somebody who's got the energy, the tenacity, to work well with people, but also hold the line on our conservative beliefs, making sure that we are protecting our faith and our religious institutions, making sure that we are keeping taxes low, making sure that we're getting government out of the way that makes life much more challenging for small businesses and working families. I've done that in the State House. I've done that in Washington, and we're going to continue to do that.
Fry making his case to South Carolina voters, but the race to replace Senator Lindsey Graham is expected to be a crowded one. We continue our coverage of the candidates vying for the seat with Republican Senate candidate Mark Lynch. That's next. You're watching On the Record. Welcome back to On the Record. The race for South Carolina's open U.S. Senate seat continues to grow, with candidates making their case to voters across the state. We continue our conversations with the people seeking that job. That includes South Carolina businessman Mark Lynch. Why did you want to run for this seat?
I was asked to run. People that know me in our community as a business leader in Greenville and have known me with our United Patriots Alliance group, a political activist group. We've done a lot of work protecting the Second Amendment, fighting the closure of the state during COVID, and stopping the appointment of a health czar to bring back vaccine mandates again.
So you've campaigned for it previously. During that campaign, what was your takeaway? What issues matter the most to South Carolina voters right now, you'd say?
The biggest issue, after over 200 presentations around the state and 35,000 miles of touring in our campaign for 15 months, is affordability, fighting inflation. People are struggling with their bills, their health insurance bills, electric bills, gas, groceries. We have a major problem. The cost of living's risen through the roof, and nobody's addressing that.
How do you fix that?
Number one is stop spending. You know, in our business, if we're in a deficit like the country is with $39 trillion in debt and growing tremendously just with the interest rates, we've got to stop spending. The second thing is stop big corporations that are seizing and buying up our single-family homes in South Carolina.
The conflict in Iran has also played a role in driving up prices recently. What do you make of that? Do you have any concern that that conflict or that war continues, that prices will go beyond what consumers can afford in the U.S. and in South Carolina?
Well, there's a concern with why are our gas prices rising in America? When we drill, baby, drill, we have our own gas, our own oil production in America, and we're not dependent on Iran's oil. So that's an issue. Is it the fleecing of America, or are we just raising our prices because other people are affected by it worse than we are? So I would bring focus on that and get to the bottom of it and see why do we have to keep increasing our pricing.
We already have a pretty large field that has filed to run for this seat. We expect to have a runoff because of so many candidates are in this race. How would you distinguish yourself among the other Republicans that have filed to run?
Yeah, well, I'm the only one that's not a career politician.
I've had a few folks already say that about their own campaigns, though.
Yeah, well, I'm a successful businessman. I've grown a business in the last 40 years, 35 times, debt-free, from 5 employees to 110. I bought into my father's business, and it's an appliance and furniture business. We're in our 74th year, and I know what it's like, and I know what people are going through because I'm one on the outside having to put up with the taxes and all the things we have, all the hoops we jump through to run our business successfully. And we hire Americans. We don't have any illegal aliens working for our company. We don't do that. And it's about America first. And a real America first candidate understands what that means. I'm for tariffs like Trump has proposed. We have to equalize the cost from foreign countries importing their goods and services into America. We have manufacturers in our industry that have left and have opened up factories in China and Taiwan and Vietnam, and they think that's the easier route to go. But we saw the national security threat during COVID-19, right, in 2020, and we saw how unavailable our products are.
Often when we see tariffs brought down, we see companies pass that cost on to consumers, back to that affordability issue. How can you ensure those tariffs don't harm people's pocketbooks when they go to?
Well, it wouldn't harm our pocketbooks if we're adding a tariff to foreign competition. It would equalize and give people the right to buy American-made, American quality products that are built to our codes that are employing Americans and keeping the money in America.
It would just take a few years for it to adjust, I imagine.
A little bit.
So many companies manufacture
Sure.
Overseas. What would you tell voters who voted for Senator Graham in the first primary? Why should they vote for you this time around?
Well, we pointed out a lot of things, and it wasn't a hit on Lindsey Graham. It was just talking about the facts, because we get to talk about our employees, don't we? I mean, we do. We get to discuss our employees at Lynch Appliance Center. We get to talk about our employees in the U.S. Senate. Lindsey's voting record was 57% constitutionally, lifetime voting record. He had funneled over $122 million through USAID to NGOs working directly with Hamas and Al-Qaeda. As the head of the Budget Committee in the fourth quarter of 25, he allocated $5.67 billion to illegal aliens to support their shelter, health care, clothing needs. Illegal aliens. We don't have the money to do that, but if we're going to do that, why don't we give it to our veterans that served our country and risked their lives to support our freedoms?
From the Palmetto State to the Tar Heel State, the Senate race is heating up between Democrat Roy Cooper and Republican Michael Whatley in North Carolina. Both candidates making stops throughout the state over the last several weeks. Those speaking appearances leading to criticism of each other's policies, and both laid out their plans to address rising costs impacting families across North Carolina and the country. Currently, Cooper has a lead over Whatley in most public polls. However, history is not on Cooper's side. North Carolinians have not selected a Democrat to the Senate in nearly 2 decades. As the race enters its final stretch, both sides are preparing for a flood of campaign spending after Labor Day. When we come back, we'll shift from the campaign trail to a moment of remembrance. A look at the funeral for Senator Lindsey Graham and the legacy he leaves behind. Next, On the Record.
But no matter how heated things got in Washington, virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody. He was a tough cookie, okay? I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham being remembered this week both nationally and in the Palmetto State. Memorial services for the longtime lawmaker were held Tuesday in D.C., with more happening in South Carolina on Wednesday. I attended those services at the state capitol in Columbia, where he was first elected back in 1992.
I think he always had America's best interest at heart.
From Ed Kelly of Palmetto, Florida, to Columbia native Sherry Miracle.
What all he's done for this state, as well as in Washington, starting out, absolutely nothing, and look where he wound up.
Mourners on hand Wednesday morning said Lindsey Graham was a loyal servant to both his country and his home state of South Carolina. Graham, who was first elected to public office in 1992, served as a state lawmaker and a congressman for a decade before being elected to the U.S. Senate in 2002. The Air Force veteran was honored with a procession in front of the state capitol and an F-16 flyover. His casket, followed by his sister, Senator Darlene Graham, and the Graham family, was then brought down Main Street to First Baptist Church of Columbia. Graham honored during a large funeral service where Republicans and Democrats alike were in attendance to pay their final respects. Congressman Jim Clyburn reading from the book of Psalms.
Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Graham eulogized by Governor Henry McMaster, Senator Tim Scott, and former Congressman and Fox News host Trey Gowdy.
Lindsey, I loved you. You made me laugh. You made me think. Maybe you want to jump out of airplanes. You got me fined by the FCC when you came on my show. And you have made me cry.
After the tributes for the late Senator Lindsey Graham in Washington and Columbia, Graham's casket made its way back to Pickens County one final time. Dozens of people who live in the area lined the streets as the procession made its way through downtown central South Carolina. Police officers escorted the hearse, while firefighters held a large American flag as a final salute. The procession also made a stop at Graham's childhood home before continuing to Mount Zion Cemetery, where he was laid to rest beside his parents in a private ceremony.
We want them to know what it means to be a patriot. And so whether, we always agreed with him or not, that doesn't matter at all. We are just grateful for his decades of service to the nation as a service member and as a politician and fighting for everyday people.
And the mayor of Central says in March, Graham helped secure a $2 million federal grant to build a new fire station. Town leaders say they're now brainstorming ways to honor Graham's legacy, including a possible tribute at that new station. The Pentagon is set to rename a South Carolina military base after the late senator. Graham's Air Force service, which began in the 1980s after he attended law school, included 6 years of active duty that also had 4 years as a lead prosecutor out of Germany's Rhine-Main Air Base. In total, Graham served 33 years in the Air Force and Air Force Reserve. An Air Force memo this week directed officials at Charleston Base to order them to begin the process of changing the name to Joint Base Lindsey Graham. Supporters say the change honors Graham's decades of service to both the military and Congress. When we return, final thoughts. We'll be right back with more On the Record. Welcome back to On the Record. In this episode, we looked into more of the notable candidates looking to run for the South Carolina Senate seat set to open in January of next year. Early voting for the special election runs from Wednesday, August 5th to Friday the 7th. The actual primary is August 11th, with the runoff scheduled for the 25th. I'm Andy Weber. Thanks for joining us on The Record.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.